Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Area Sales Manager Kent Steinman from Eastern Illinois and Shelby Weckel from Ehler Brothers join us. Shelby gives us her insight on what she has been seeing so far this harvest. Ben discusses the most recent test plot data that has been submitted. Joe shares with us the top 3 reasons why a farmer buys from a dealer based off the market research.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. Keep in mind that if you can't watch it, you can follow us or listen to it on podcasts. Today we have Ben, and then we have some special guests. So I'm going to turn it over to Ben.
Yes, today we are extremely pleased to have Kent Steinman, our area sales manager for Central Illinois, and Shelby Weckel from Ehler Brothers. She is the sales agronomist for Ehlers in Thomasboro, Illinois. So welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to start, let's start with Shelby here. Give us a little bit of a harvest update on what you guys are seeing. Give us a little bit of update of how things are going in Central Illinois.
Okay. Overall, progress has been very steady until this past week, which we've had quite a bit of rain this last week. We'd have very good progress. Corn, we're probably about 50% progress through. Soybeans, probably about 30%. We had some standability issues with corn. And so we really encouraged our growers to go out and get that corn if they were able to. Even if the moisture was a little high, we definitely wanted to go get it. It's better to get it out before it all goes down or had more issues. And I think a lot of those standability issues came from diseases that moved in late in the season. And those diseases included tar spot, southern rust, anthracnose, and we're seeing some crown rot as well. So with the quick dry down due to those diseases, there was probably about 2 weeks in there. We lost several points of moisture extremely quickly. And again, that led to some early harvests from guys starting early. Winds, we had some winds that came through. And so that started taking the corn down. And again, we really encouraged growers to go get that corn and get started on that so we didn't have to deal with more down corn. Overall, yields are very pleased. I would say average to better than average. Overall, there's territorial differences and environmental differences. Management really paid this year on corn between timely fungicide applications. Tile really paid fertility and just going to get the harvest on time. So seeing really good results on corn, very pleased in our area with the yields. Soybeans, there's probably, like I said, about 30% percent done in this area. Overall results very pleasing again. Guys are maybe disappointed just because we aren't seeing the yields that we've seen in the past years. They're used to 75 plus bushel beans, whereas they're seeing maybe 65, 70 to 75. We're not seeing those top end yields, at least yet. We've got a long ways to go on soybeans. So overall pleased. Again, management paid on soybeans. Fungicide, Kent, you say 6 to 8 bushel you're seeing?
6 to 8, yeah.
Okay, all right. So very good results on those. So we had some heavy rains in July that really led to probably the pull down of that yield. And that's probably why we're seeing some issues. The soybeans were yellow for a very long period of time. So I'm assuming we had some root growth issues. So that probably is where we impacted our yield the most on soybeans. So overall, again, I think early soybeans that have come out, I had one grower that had some 70 bushel Apaches. He was very pleased. They were planted for April. He planted those like April 5th or 7th. He was right after Easter there. He ended up planting. So overall, again, very pleased with results in our territory so far.
Shelby, in Champaign County, and Ehler Brothers have a reputation for being hands-on. I mean, as far as agronomy and making recommendations, and you have an entire team that works with you. You also do a survey on rootworm adults too. In other words, and your recommendations are based on whether you need the rootworm trait or not, based on what you see for adults. What did you see this summer for adults?
Correct, sure. So this year we probably had 30 locations that we had rootworm beetle traps out, and we used the yellow sticky traps for our are set for checking those. And we saw little to no populations once again. We were a little concerned that the populations would be up a little bit this year, but I think again, when the rains fell in July, we think we may have impacted the larvae in the soil again. So many of the locations were zeros for the 4 weeks we had traps out. There was maybe 1 week, we usually see 1 week that the populations are a little higher, but still nothing near threshold. So once again, we will be recommending double pro hybrids in our territory with no insecticide with it.
That's great information.
Yeah. So I had a question, if we want to back up just a little bit to the corn standability. Before we were aired, we were kind of talking about, what practices worked well this year. Can you highlight just a little bit on that of the extended disease pressure? What worked well, and what do you guys see in your guys' testing and when you guys are out looking at stuff?
So I think fungicide is the key this year, and again, timely applications of it. Guys that sprayed early on or just sprayed because it was time to spray, we saw little to no disease until R1. After brown silk, there was little to nothing prior to that. And so I don't think guys really necessarily did that scouting to pay attention to that. What they do is just the environments that we had, it had been wet and humid. And so, yes, the environment was right, but I don't think it was the exact time to spray. So I think that later management of that fungicide application was really key to a big piece of it.
And also you got to throw in the correct fungicides.
Yes.
They may have to pay a little bit more for those tar spot, for the fungicide part of it, where we get longer disease control for the, residual part of it. So, but there's some things we're learning. Tar spots here, it's not going away. I think they found it further south than us now, and it's down Kentucky, I think is what I read, but it's all over. So we just got to be more prevalent on what we search for out there when we crop scout.
And if we want to avoid a 2 application pass, which is what it's sort of looking like up north, a lot of growers are having to make 2 applications. We've got to scout for it, and we have to be on top of it and just know if it's present or it's not present. And looking at the weather outlook, how bad is it going to get at that point?
So you did some ground applications of fungicide and also air. I know you don't have data, but you have at least some observations that you can share with us. Which one was best?
So early application of aerial fungicide, we're seeing probably a little less control. I feel like the tar spots still moved in very heavy to those fields. Later applications of fungicide aerial, we're seeing maybe a little better control. Standability is much more improved over the early one. And I think you're being able to hold out that disease a little better. I'm not saying tar spot is not present, but I think it definitely helped the stock quality of being able to not take away from that stock quality based on that disease. We have, I know, maybe 2 growers that did ground applications, and definitely seeing those standability plus sides of corn. I can't necessarily say there's a yield difference. There's not enough data out there to say that for sure, but I think it was definitely a plus to wait again for the standability side of things. Definitely a yield advantage across the board, regardless that if you sprayed early or late. But I definitely think the standability piece added to it because you weren't having to pick up corn.
So to clarify, when you're talking early versus late, are you talking pre-tassel versus post-brown silk?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
what we're talking about there? Okay. Let's change gears just a little bit and talk about what we're seeing on soybean yields, Extend Flex versus Enlist, and all that fun stuff. And we don't necessarily need to get into specifics, but our competitors talk about this 4 to 6 bushel yield advantage of Extend and Extend Flex over Enlist. What are you guys seeing out in the marketplace?
We really aren't seeing that advantage over each. Out in the countryside, I'm not hearing growers necessarily say my Extend Flex beans are better than my neighbors enlist beans or vice versa. And a little bit of data that we've done with Ehler Brothers, it's flat. We've had very equal results across the board. I'm not bragging one or the other. Mershman has done very well for us, and we feel comfortable with the enlist lineup because of the questions in the chemical side of that world. There's a lot of questions with that and where those might head down the road, and very comparable in yield overall. There is no yield advantage from our side that we would say that one is better than the other.
So yeah, it boils down to matching the genetics to the right soil.
Yes.
And then of course considering what type of weed control you need for the weeds that you need. So the discussion about one trait being better than the other trait is really not the right way to choose a soybean.
No. Our argument of management and seed treatments, that can all make a big difference. And you don't always know what each grower is doing. They may have a slightly different management tactic than your neighbor or yourself. And knowing all those differences is definitely a piece of it.
Joe, do we have any more questions for Kent and Shelby?
Oh, I have one. If someone wants to contact you, Shelby, what's your contact information? And of course, if you're not familiar with Ehler Brothers, their new facility is just outside of Flatville, Illinois. It's one of the nicest in the country because it was a research site for a major company, and they took it over. So it's a very, very nice facility, and we've been doing business with Ehler Brothers since the early 80s, and they run a very, very high-level, intense seed business and custom application and hands-on all the time, as long as I've known them, and extremely high integrity and honesty. And that's why I guess our two companies mirror each other from that aspect. We work hard for the farmer. So Shelby, how do we get a hold of Ehler Brothers or yourself if somebody wants to do some business with you?
Sure. You can actually visit our website. We have www.ehlerbrothers.com. And you can visit that, and all of our contact information is there. And my personal email is shelby@ehlerbros.com. So feel free to reach out if you need any questions.
And another aspect of your business is Chris Ehler, who does the ultra early planning, and that's always exciting when he tries to break the system by planning February, March, or I don't know whenever the planter can get across the field. And of course, you have Linda in your organization that keeps the glue to everything together on the paperwork side, and of course David, the patriarch of the organization, and now his son Aaron is also in the dealership. So great group of folks, and we're real proud to be able to work with you.
We are hoping to get that early planning date out our next go around of soybean cutting here. So hopefully we'll have some data as soon as it dries out again.
Fantastic. But before you leave, we're going to have you sit in and see what you think of the corny jokes, because we always end the segment with a corny joke, and corny jokes were invented, we believe, by seed companies just a little bit after the 1900s. They would send out their seed guides, and in this case it was many times vegetable guides, and they were so unexciting that they had to put a joke on each page to get people to keep turning the pages to hopefully see the seed varieties. So we do the same thing with Cup of Joe, so hopefully they stay to the end. Anyhow, the two that I have today, I'll start out easy and then we'll try to end it up with a good one. What did the plate say during dinner at the restaurant? What did the plate say during dinner at the restaurant? And this was a very expensive restaurant too. Okay? Don't worry about paying the bill because dinner is on me. Okay. Now, I have this thing about bar jokes. I always enjoy a bar joke. So this one here is: a dog is drinking at a bar and says to the bartender, "I'll have another beer." The bartender replies, "You've had enough. I'm cutting you off." The dog says, "But I've only had 2 beers." The bartender replies, "Yeah, but that's 14 in dog beers."
Cute, very cute.
Okay, good. I thought maybe that one there might hit a plus mark. Well, thanks for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, Ben, what do you have for us this week?
Well, I just wanted to kind of highlight, I guess, the same thing was what Shelby and Kent were talking about on a little bit of preliminary data. We have 3 plots that have came out. One was in Kent's area, which is central and eastern Illinois. One was in western Illinois, and one was in south central Iowa. And they are big plots. Like, one of the plots had 60 entries, the other plot had 30, and I think the one in Kent's area might have had 30 or 35 entries. And they're all mixed in with Extend, Flex, and Enlist, where they were just sprayed with Liberty. And it's just a big mishmash of data. And by the time it all filters out, on one plot, we might be 1.5 bushel better on the Extend Flex. On the other plot, we might be 2 bushel better on the Enlist. But by the time, what's really important when you're looking at that data is if it doesn't provide your standard deviation, you always want to calculate what your standard deviation is. And in all 3 instances of this anecdotal evidence, the standard deviation is always a bushel or 2 higher than what the difference between the 2 Extend versus Enlist are. So statistically, it's not significant.
And these yields were what, 70 plus in these plots?
All 3 plots were 70 plus. Yes, that is correct.
And some hit 90, right?
Yep.
So really, really, really good plots.
Yep, and it's good data too. So I mean, there's not a lot of variability between the top to the bottom. So those are all things that you want to look at, but it goes back down to what Shelby and Kent were talking about, and you as well. You know, it's about getting the right bean in the right field and knowing what your herbicide program looks like, what your expenses are going to be on those herbicides. Those are the things that I would be thinking about if I'm picking my soybean varieties for.
Yeah, and keep in mind the Enlist E3 has the application window up to R2, where it's only R1 on the dicamba label, so
yep,
that's a big difference too.
Yep, that buys you 7 to 10 days there. And one of the other things, you know, as we talk to some of chemical suppliers that we have close contact with, you know, Enlist, it may be tight, it may be a little bit more expensive, but I definitely think we're going to have the availability for the Enlist product.
Let's hope so.
Yep.
I had just a couple things, and going back to our market research that was done in August and September. And one of the things that we follow very closely is what are the top 3 reasons a farmer the reasons why they want to buy from a seed dealer. In other words, what's important to them. And number 1 was seed selection advice. In other words, just exactly what we were talking about. A farmer wants the dealer to have the knowledge to put the right product on the right field. And that's number 1. That ranked number 1 in farmers' minds. Number 2 in farmers' minds was honesty, reliability, and trustworthy. And believe it or not, when they compared all the top companies that we compete with, Mershman Seeds ranked number 1 for that trait. So we're very proud of that, and I know my dad would be. The other important in the top 3 is trait knowledge. And, you know, we just talked about that too today. The fact that we know, you know, what herbicides and where it fits best, which weeds, and basically understanding how to match the trait to that weed problem. So those are the top 3 things that are in farmers' minds when they buy from a seed dealer. And the other area I'd like to share about market research is seed treatment. Believe it or not, Mershman Seeds Bonus Coated Plus with Pearl Coat Plus had a satisfaction rate of 100% in that survey. Now, that's compared to the Acceleron package, which was 89%, which is still very good, but the overall average for seed treatment in the study was 74%.
So 74% satisfaction.
74% satisfaction. So our seed treatment ranks as the very, very best out there, beating all other seed treatments when it came to customer satisfaction. And I think that's because not only are we putting the right combination of fungicides and insecticide, but we're also putting that seed finisher on there, which really makes a big difference on flowability. Keep in mind this year, we are adding additional fungicide to our package. We're improving our Bonus Coat Plus with Pearl Coat Plus, which will give us better seedling pythium and also seedling phytophthora control. And why do we do that? Because there's new strains of Pythium out there that metalaxyl apron is not controlling. So we need that additional fungicide, different mode of action to go after these Pythium problems. Pythium is a problem in wet, cold conditions. Phytophthora is seedling phytophthora in warm, wet. So that's a couple little nuggets there to pass on to our customers.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that concludes this week's episode of Cup of Joe. As always, please be safe out there harvesting, driving down the road, and hope you and your families are doing well, and we'll see you next week.